just people, so people know, the people from Kilkenny County Council representing the Planning Department are Nicholas Lowe, Dennis Malone, Naomi Scully and Katrina O'Sullivan. And from the HSE, we have Ed Fennell, who's the Estates Manager with the HSE Southeast, and also Kieran Ruan, who's the Senior Engineer on HSE Estates. So quite a unique public consultation occasion, to my knowledge anyway, involving both HSE and Kilkenny County Council, both in relation to this very important area of Kilkenny City, which comprises in the region of about 60 acres, and you'll hear more about that as the evening progresses. I suppose just to kind of quickly go through the purpose of the evening, this is part of the preparation of a master plan for those areas I mentioned, St.Canice's campus, the Lacken and Maudlin's land, and the plan for this area is at the pre-draft stage, so there aren't any plans drafted as yet, and this is a public consultation, as I said, undertaken by Kilkenny County Council in partnership with the HSE, and it's part of the pre-draft phase where people are also invited to make submissions, and they're asked to do so by Friday the 30th of July. And there's a very interesting issues paper available in relation to the whole area, and I would urge people to do that, to look at that. It can be found by simply Googling Kilkenny County Council Planning and consult. Katrina might have the specific addresses at the end. People can get the resources in relation to that. And I just remind people, perhaps if you're not speaking, if you could just mute your microphones. And also when we get underway, we'll be encouraging people to turn on their cameras as well so that they can see. So I mentioned about the issues paper, which contains information and quite historical, quite interesting historical information and some visuals in relation to the whole St.Canice's area and the development of the land and also the buildings on the site. It is a very significant area of land, and it's actually bigger than Kilkenny Castle Park. And the purpose of the master plan is to develop a detailed framework of policies for planning for the future. And among those would be the development of a vision and what would be the vision for the area and the core design principles, to try and from the vision to try and distill down what the priorities would be, and also to the requirements would be going into the future for the HSE. And I suppose in considering all of the issues, it's just very important to bear in mind the strategic location of the lands, because they're a large area just adjacent to the centre of Kilkenny City. There's very diverse needs in the area. The HSE actually uses the buildings, many of the buildings there currently as well, and those needs need to be protected. There's very high quality landscape, and there are historical and heritage buildings, and also some very important environmental features there as well. So there are a lot of questions to consider in the issues paper, and they cover environmental, health and well-being considerations, the whole issue of connecting the site to other areas between existing green spaces and so on, and encouraging use of greenways, and also the entire development of Kilkenny. So those are the issues. The format for the evening will be that we will have 3 presentations. Ed Fennell from HSE will make a presentation. Naomi Scully and Nicholas Lowe from Kilkenny County Council will also make presentations. Very much this is a public meeting and a public consultation meeting. So after the presentations, the input of you, the people attending, is of the utmost importance. So we'd be asking you to make observations, suggestions, if you have questions, or if you'd like to raise issues for discussion, please do so. You can do that in a number of ways. The chat feature on the top of your screen, which is the speech bubble, you can put in questions to that throughout the presentations. It will be possible to answer some of those, and our colleagues from the HSE and from Kilkenny County Council may be able to answer some of those just in the discussion box. But if you'd like to put in questions there as well, or observations, you can do so. I'll endeavour to cover all of the questions, or as many of them as we can. It depends on the volume of questions, but we'll do our best to get through as many questions. With the comments, I'll try to give you a flavour of the comments, but of course you can actually read the comments yourselves throughout. So that's the format. Just a reminder for people who've just joined us that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording has started. And if that causes you any problems, you may contact any of the members of the staff from Kilkenny County Council after the meeting, and they'll ensure that your wishes in relation to the showing of your participation could be managed. So shortly, we'll get underway. Just a reminder about the questions. You can put them in the speech box down the side, or the dialogue box at the top, which is the speech bubble, and we'll do our best to get to those. I would ask your patience, because I'm here sitting looking at a computer, same as everybody else, and so the questions can tend to whir by so quickly that I may hop over them, but hopefully some of the people from Kilkenny County Council will keep me on my toes and remind me if I've missed any questions, and just emphasise that we really want to get as many questions answered as we can, to raise as many issues and suggestions. And as I said, the development of the master plan for this area is at the pre-drafting stage. So the process will be outlined in more detail, but we're very much at the initial stages. There is no plan, so therefore you should feel free to throw whatever issues you feel like raising into the mix, or to make any suggestions, no matter how outlandish you feel they may be. And just a reminder that this is just part of the public consultation. The public are invited to make submissions up until 5 p.m. on Friday, July 30th. And you can find information on the Kilkenny County Council website in relation to that. It's coming up to 9 minutes past 7 now at this stage. We're hoping the presentations, we hope, will take about half an hour. And after that, the questions and answers session, we're hoping to get it wrapped by about 8:30 to allow people to go out and to enjoy what remains of this lovely evening. But we're not on a hard and fast end. If people still wish to make points or whatever, we can extend that somewhat. But I think if we just bear in mind that we're aiming for roughly 8:30. Just as if this was in the real world, I suppose, this is about the 6th of such public consultations I've moderated. But I just ask people to observe the same niceties, I suppose, or the same rules as you would in a real world meeting. No interrupting people, show courtesy towards people, and politeness and fairness, and listen to people's points of view. I'm not expecting a contentious meeting, but it's in the world of online and online meetings, I always think it's worthwhile stressing the need for civility and respect and civilized meetings. So I'm going to ask Ed Fennell, who is from the HSE and who is the estates manager for the Southeast for the HSE, to begin our presentations this evening, and I'll hand you over to Ed. Ed, if you're ready to go. And so could I just finally ask everyone to make sure you're muted, and when we get to the questions and answers, you can use the raise hand function at the top of your screen. So that's it from me for the moment. I'll hand over to you, Ed.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Naomi, I think, is going to put up a few slides that we'll just have up there while I'm talking.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay
as
there?
John said, I'm Estates Manager for HSE Southeast. That covers all of Waterford, Wexford, Carlow, Kilkenny, South Tipperary. Kieran Rowan, my senior engineer in Kilkenny, is on the call with us tonight. So if there's questions I can't answer, I think Kieran is probably better positioned than myself. He knows the site better than I do, so he'll be here with us as well. So look, what I'd like to do is first of all give just a brief overview of the St.Canice's campus, what it consists of, and what activities are happening there at the moment, just so you give a feel for, if you like, what the HSE activities on the site are. I'll also give a little bit of information in terms of, why we're interested in this master plan now, and then I'll move on to our thoughts, HSE thoughts, in terms of, what we would like to see in the master plan. We are very clear that the master plan is being developed by the local authority. It's really part of their statutory planning function, but HSE are working as hand in hand as closely as we can, and we have worked very closely with the local authority for many years in Kilkenny. So it is part of a very good ongoing working relationship. Okay, so just very briefly, in terms of the map of the campus there, you can see that it's a large site. It's approximately 60 acres of a site. We're bounded by the River Nore. On one side, we have extensive frontage onto the River Nore. We have the N10 Kilkenny Ring Road on the second side, and the third side of our site is effectively the old Dublin Road. Two major blocks of development on the site in terms of buildings. There's the old St.Canice's buildings, which is the large block on your left, and then the Lacken headquarters, as we call it, still maybe headquarters building, what was the former Southeastern Health Board headquarters building, the Lacken building on the right of the map there. Just a little bit of information in terms of, I suppose, what's happening in each of the areas. I suppose the big developed area is the St.Canice's buildings. This is the former mental health residential centre. Largely, the residents have moved out and moved on, and numbers have reduced significantly. Overall on the site, we have about 20 residents at the moment, about 15 in St. Gabriel's unit over at the main campus building, and 6 residents in the Atlantis house, which is just the house on your left as you come in the front gate. So that's the extent of residential services on site. They're all under the mental health service. Then in the main St.Canice's building itself, we have about 200 staff and various public services in that building.
Someone talking.
And again,
now.
just a flavour of what's in
Yeah.
the St.Canice's building.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, could I just put
Thanks.
in here? Sorry to interrupt.
Right,
There's someone with their mic not muted. Could I ask the gentleman or lady, whoever that is, just to mute their mic?
Okay,
Okay,
we go
do
again.
you want to continue?
In the St.Canice's building, I suppose just a flavour of the services that are there. Obviously, mental health services are still there. A lot of the mental health admin and a significant amount of day services in that building. Now, some of the day hospital services are about to move out of that building across to the new primary care centre that has just been developed over at the New Park Shopping Centre. That building is just complete. We're equipping our part of it at the moment, so some of the services will be moving there in the next few weeks, along with a significant volume of other primary care services going into that new building. So I suppose I'm just flagging that as one of our new flagship developments in terms of health in Kilkenny.
Okay.
Again, other services on site. Tusla Children's Services have a presence on site. They provide frontline services from the St.Canice's building. Public Health, again, very much in the news lately. They have a significant number of people working out of St.Canice's. Health Promotion, we'll actually have a short video from Joan from Public Health giving us a view on the public health and the health promotion, on the health promotion side of things. We also have corporate finance, who provide a lot of national services. We have recruitment, we have procurement services, again, providing national services. We have ICT, so quite a mix of people. As I say, about 200 people in all working out of that building. The other significant building then is the Lacken, the former Southeastern Health Board headquarters building. We have about approximately 150 staff working there. Again, quite a mix. I suppose the main purpose, the main residence in that building now, it is the headquarters for the Southeast Community Health Services. So that is the non-acute health services all across the Southeast, which includes mental health, older persons, primary care, and health and well-being. So there's the whole management team for that service are in Lacken. We have other services there then that would be public health. Ourselves, the states are in there. We have about 12 people. Finance would be a significant part of the Lacken building, internal audit and health and well-being. So again, that's just giving you an overall feel for what's in the building and what's going on overall. So maybe Naomi, if we move on to the next slide, that's just a map of the site. We've broken it into a couple of different areas. It's different direction to the aerial photograph that we had, but it just shows you the breakdown. There's a mix of obviously the St.Canice's and the area around that, the Lacken building up at the very top left-hand corner. The bottom green is agricultural land at the moment, and there's a significant chunk of amenity land along the river, and also I suppose what we would call the steep embankment of the river. There's about 5 acres of land there. There's about 2 acres of amenity land. There's 15 acres of agricultural land. There's about 12 acres around St.Canice's. There's obviously the pitch and putt course that everyone is familiar with. As soon as you come in the front gate, it's what's straight in front of you. There's about 4.5 acres there. Sorry, 5.5 acres there. So to move on in terms of what we're about, I suppose the reason we're here is this has been flagged to us by the local authority for a long number of years as being a prime site and an important site to Kilkenny. So we're well aware that we're sitting on a very important asset of Kilkenny's. We are, over the last number of years in the HSE, there has been a move that lands or any assets that are surplus to requirements are being disposed of, and the general route of that is the disposal happens and the money is reinvested via the capital plan. Now we would have done that in a number of centres such as St.Canice in Enniscorthy recently and some others as well. I suppose when we're looking at the St.Canice site, we have to look at how do we make best use of it in terms of healthcare provision, and if we're going to dispose of it, how do we realise best value? So that certainly does push us into looking at what is the plan for the site, what's the zoning, what's the master plan, what's the development plan. I suppose one of the key things driving us at the moment is this, what I'm calling a change in the definition of healthcare. For a long number of years, I suppose a lot of our healthcare provision was really dealing with sick people. They come in, they're ill, you provide a service of some sort, whether it is physical, mental, or whatever else, and that's it. The definition of healthcare is changing significantly, and much more of a move now to health and well-being. And what are the things that keep people healthy? What are the things that keep people from getting sick? What are the things that keep people at home? So these are becoming more and more. Prevention is a lot better than cure. It's as simple as that. So with that in mind, when we started looking ourselves at the St.Canice site, immediately there's a number of things that come to mind. We've had a number of approaches from different sports clubs over the last few years, looking for space for sports facilities. Because we didn't have a master plan or an overall development plan for the site, we weren't really in a position to make any decisions on those. But as we think about it, it really does raise the opportunity of how we make best use of this overall land bank and campus in terms of health and well-being as well as health services. Okay, so I think there's a real opportunity for us there in that, and we're absolutely happy to work with the local authority in terms of at least putting our input into what we think is at this stage the best use of that land and the site and the overall. And we reckon it will include a mix of, there will be requirements for more buildings at some stage. There will be requirements for various things. It could be a mix of public, it could be private, it could be amenity, it could be anything at this stage. There is no plan as such. We're at the very early stages. So I think it's important to say that. So Naomi, I'm happy we move on. This is Joan. from Health and Wellbeing, and she's just going to say a bit about the overall health promotion and health wellbeing. There's about 2-minute video.
Hello, my name is Joan Murphy and I'm the Health Promotion Manager in South East Community Healthcare based here in St.Canice Hospital. I am delighted to be involved in the proposed new developments of the grounds here in St.Canice and Lacken, and I truly believe that this presents us a wonderful opportunity for the creation of an environment that promotes health and wellbeing for all who use it, including clients, staff and the general public and community. The importance of creating a healthy environment or healthy campus here in St.Canice will facilitate and support each of us who use these grounds to enjoy physical and mental well-being to our full potential. We know from our experience of working in health promotion that a significant number of factors influence health and well-being, and it is really important that we look at these determinants of health in any new proposed developments. One of the significant determinants of our health is our environment, and creating environments that supports individuals and societies to make the healthier choice the easier choice are key enablers for health and well-being, and indeed for improvement in population health. We know that creating green spaces provides significant benefits for enhancing health and well-being. We also know that any new developments, the design of these plans and facilities must take into account the different groups of people who will be accessing these activities and services, as well as the changing needs of people over their life course. The development of St.Canice's grounds therefore needs to adopt a life course approach, which will be mindful of the needs of young children all the way to older adults, and also mindful of the needs of the different groups of people accessing these activities and services. In addition to green space and the changing needs of people over their life course, we also need to look at the unique assets and characteristics of these grounds and how these can be enhanced and developed to create a health promoting environment. Particular attention needs to be given to how St.Canice's grounds can become a healthy campus, which would promote physical activity, enhance mental well-being, enhance social interactions, create multisensory environments, and also create a sense of place for all users. Hello, my name
Thanks, Naomi. So look, that gives a feel, I think, in terms of, you know, the change in emphasis from healthcare as curing illness to healthcare as being promoting good health, promoting health and well-being, and as I said, avoiding a lot of the problems that we've been having, and that's physical, mental, and all areas. So look, in very brief summary from HSE estates and HSE perspective, you know, we are very clear this is a local authority master plan. HSE, we are setting out our ideas as they are at this stage, and we are certainly open and we are listening in terms of what the best use for this campus would be. I suppose the last thing I want to see is us selling off chunks of land to private developers that go off and get planning permission for whatever else, and that we lose an opportunity. I think if we have a good master plan set out for how we're going to use all of that site for health promotion and all that, I think we have, it is the best, my view, that will give us the best use of the site. I also just wanted to make the point that right now there are no projects or proposals under active consideration. So this is not the forerunner to us building something new or just paving the way. This is us working with the local authority and getting that master plan, so that as those proposals come to us in the future, we will have something to hold them up against to say, how does that fit against the master plan? Does it fit in? Have we identified a space? Is it suitable? So that we then have a proper basis for assessing any proposals that come to us. So thank you very much for listening. I'll hand back now to John.
Thank you very much, Ed. That was Ed Fennell, Estates Manager with HSE Southeast, and that's very interesting presentation. Ed, one of the things that surprised me about it was that there's actually about 350 people working on the campus at the moment, which is actually impressive, and I'm sure there are many people that don't actually realise that, but that's really significant. amount of employment. Also, Joan made the point about the importance of a life course approach that is mindful of the needs of different groups of people and the varied group from the young to the older citizens and so on. And that's a very interesting bit as well. And also, I think you pointed out the opportunity that exists with currently, you know, as Ed pointed out, that there have been approaches in the past for projects, but those haven't progressed in the absence of a master plan. There are currently no projects live or under active consideration. So this master plan, it really shows that it represents a really exciting opportunity. And so next, I suppose, from the perspective of Kilkenny County Council, Naomi Scully will commence to give us, I suppose, an overview of the issues and the master plan and what will be considered in relation to it. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, John. So as John said there, I'm Naomi Scully and I work in the forward planning section of Kilkenny County Council. And tonight I'm going to give you an insight into how this opportunity arose here and what is master plan and the process and where we are now with this process. And later then in the presentation, I will hand you over to my colleague Nicholas Lowe, who will discuss the site and its context, studies that have been undertaken, the issues paper, and issues for you to consider as members of the public and how you can then engage further in the process. So as part of the 2014-2020 development plan, Kilkenny County Council acknowledged that St.Canice's campus in Kilkenny City was an opportunity site. This was then further acknowledged in the draft Kilkenny City and County Development Plan, which will be in place until 2027. An objective, as shown on the screen, is now part of the draft plan. So during the lifetime of this plan, it is an objective to prepare a master plan for these lands in partnership with the HSE. A master plan, and what is it? So a master plan will set out a vision and core design principles for the site. It will allocate development principles and identify land uses whilst ensuring orderly and sustainable development of the site. Once adopted, the master plan will consist of a written statement and accompanying maps, including a vision, policy and key objectives specific to HSE St.Canice's campus. So the process of making a master plan. To commence the process, Kilkenny County Council and the HSE set up a steering committee and arranged for background studies to be completed. The completion of these stages brings us to stage 3, where we are now. Once this stage is complete, we will take all submissions into consideration and prepare a draft master plan and environmental assessments, which will also be placed on public display. This stage will also include a public consultation event, and you'll be notified of this through the mediums we use for this event also. It is intended to finalise and adopt the master plan in Q2 of 2022. Thank you very much, and I'll hand you over now to Nicholas.
Thank you, Naomi. I must say now that the slides didn't move on for me, so I'm going to request control. See if I can. There you go. Okay.
Sorry about that.
So I'm just going to maximize just a second.
This is where I ask if anybody's got any birthday requests.
Naomi, can you maximize the
shout out to anybody else on the
I'm just going to start just to say that as the council, we're very excited about this site. It's not every local authority that gets the opportunity to have so many big sites become available. We have the Abbey Quarter in Kilkenny, and now we have this site very close to the city centre. As Ed has said, it's about 64 acres in extent, which is quite considerable. And John has mentioned that it's probably the size of the Castle Park, if not bigger. And it lies right adjacent to the city centre, very centrally located, close to the Nor amenity area, and I'll speak about that later, close to the Ring Road, and then obviously there's existing uses, the HSE offices, the hospital, community, there's a residence, and I will continue Naomi, I apologize.
Is that
I
okay,
think
Nicholas?
I'm going to have to share my own presentation here because
Okay.
I don't seem to be able to move those slides on.
Apologies.
While you're doing that, we'll just recap for people who've joined the meeting late. We will have questions and answers later on when the presentations have finished. We've already had a presentation this evening from Ed Fennell on behalf of the HSE. When Nicholas is finished, I think at that stage we move on to questions and answers, but I'm not sure. Nicholas, are you ready to resume?
Yes, can you see my screen?
No, not at this stage. No, not at this stage. So, who's got control? Excuse us, folks, for this glitch, but this is just to be expected when we're all inhabiting the cloud and all the so going up to the cloud and down from the cloud and to Nicholas's location. Naomi, have you given Nicholas control?
Can you see it now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can. We can
Yeah.
see slide the site. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, apologies
Okay.
for that. It's just a technical glitch.
Yeah.
So I said, as I said, it's very centrally located. It's close to the Lacken Walk, the Canal Walk, the Castle Park, the Ring Road, and the Dublin Road. It's adjacent to the Nor. Now, the Nor, as you'll see there, is a special area of conservation, and it's also a special protection area under the Habitats Directive. So environmentally, it's very sensitive. So anything that we do on this site will have to have regard to the potential for impact on the conservation objectives of the Nor Special Area of Conservation. So the site is characterized by a mature landscape with significant tree stands. And here I just have a map showing more detail, and Ed previously had a map as well. I hope you can see the cursor there. It's just an indication. Sorry, can you see the cursor?
Yeah.
Hello?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So there is an objective in the city and county, the draft city and county development plan, that we'd be linking the St.Canice area across to the Castle Park. And there is an indicative future pedestrian crossing shown there on the Canal Walk. That's to integrate this site better in future with the city centre and as an overall amenity area. That's a great opportunity. We have the only entrance to the site is off the Dublin Road at the moment. We consider that that might remain the only access for the time being, because there might be constraints about on the ring road, the N10, because it is a national road. So that's something that we'll have to look at in future. The hospital there is quite clear. The hospital is a protected structure, and that's a great consideration for us. Now, in association with a protected structure, there is also attendant grounds. So we will look back at the historic use and the historic associated lands, and I'll speak about that later on. You'll see there on the south of the site, there's an area of pasture land at the moment. We think that area is probably the area with the greatest opportunity for us to look at alternative uses on the site. Now, as Naomi mentioned, we started this process in 2019. We convened the steering group in early 2020. Just as we were about to kick off, unfortunately, COVID set in, and we had to abandon the project. But we had the opportunity to do some background studies in the interim. So we have done a topographical assessment of the site, which is, in layman's terms, it's the lie of the land. We've looked at the historic backgrounds, what kind of structures are in it, and their history. We've done an ecological assessment that was done for us by CAS, environmental group. And then we've also done a tree survey. And I'm just going to quickly refer to those individual studies. If you look at the topographical assessment here, those are the contour lines on the site. So if you look at the contour line, the purple line lying on St.Canice's Hospital there at the top, it's about 60 meters above Ordnance Datum, and it goes down to 48. So there's about a 12 meter difference between the hospital and the tree line. So that's quite significant, but it is a big piece of land, and I suppose then your slope would be slightly less severe because of the extent of that. But that provides its own challenges in terms of maybe providing pitches or any sports facilities. We did the historical background that was done for us by John Cronin, and this is a map from I suppose 1888 to 1913, the 25-inch ordnance map, and it showed a few features there, a few churches, a well, a gravel pit, and ancillary buildings. But there's nothing thrown up here on the remainder of the land that makes us concerned about, maybe any hidden features, etc., that we mightn't be aware of. It seems to have been always used as a pasture, and therefore it might be that might make it easier to develop the land. But that's definitely something we will look further into, especially as I mentioned the issue of the attendant grounds. Now, when CAS did their habitats assessment, the ecological assessment for us, they identified certain features, and this is just one map from the study. Just goes to show that there's a bit of, I suppose, agricultural grassland to the south of the site. You can see the tree line. This is a quite mature tree line all the way along the river. You have the Lacken walk going down here. So I don't think there's any intention to touch this tree line. That is, I suppose, associated with a very severe slope at the bottom of the land. So we consider that it mightn't be developable in any event, but there could be some accesses through that towards the site, opening up the site, especially the link across the river. Around St.Canice's here, you have some, I suppose, parkland associated with St.Canice's itself. And then you have existing amenity lands, which is the pitch and putt here, a bit of land here. I think that is just characterized by short maintained grass, etc. So there's no significant, I suppose, ecological issues that were thrown up that are not manageable within this process. And as I said, we've had it was a fairly comprehensive study. We also did a tree survey. Significant mature tree stands on the site. Each tree has been tagged. Each tree has been assessed. The crown of the tree, I suppose the state of the tree, its health, whether some of them have to be removed for safety, etc. So that's all in our tree report, and we have that information. So the next issue then is we have prepared an issues paper for you to consider. It, I suppose, gives a bit of a brief background to the site, and in broad discusses the issues that we discuss here this evening. It sets out the purpose of the plan, the site context and some site history, and then the key issues for consideration, which is, I suppose, the most important issue for yourselves. It also asks a few questions. These questions are to, I suppose, to start the conversation, to make you think. I have two examples here, but in broad, there are questions around the vision, the environment, health and well-being, and the kind of development. Just two examples here. One on questions on the environment. How can the landscape, the natural and the built heritage and the green infrastructure, and the local biodiversity be suitably protected while accounting for the needs of the HSE and the city. So how do we go about developing this site while protecting the environment? How can this master plan enhance urban livability? We know now that with COVID, there's a focus on people having more green space around them, as Joan has said in her video. That's a fundamental thing. That there's more focus on parklands and amenity areas. And how can the master plan enhance resilience to environmental risks? So that, especially considering the location of this site on the SAC. In developments here, what are the most appropriate range of land uses for the development of the lands in order to protect and enhance the environment? How can we ensure that the needs of different groups are adequately catered for on the site? And this can be a variety of groups. I suppose all interest groups, people living in the area, living adjacent to the site, people from the wider city, sports groups, any amenity groups. And that's why we're asking for your inputs, so that we can identify those groups and see what your needs are. How should the existing and new land uses be configured on the lands? Ed has mentioned there that some of the areas closer to the road might be suitable for different uses than the backlands closer to the river, which might be a bigger amenity focus. So what are your thoughts on that? We haven't made up our minds on any of these, and so it's as I said, a great opportunity for everybody to input. So then the last is just how to interact with this process. So when you go to consult.kilkenny.ie, and many of you might have seen this, we put a notice in the paper. Some of you might have looked at the issues paper on Consult. It's our consultation portal. We use it for all the council's projects. We use it for the development plan, all Part 8 projects that, roads, etc. So it's all there. You can look at the issues paper there, ask yourself those questions, and then come back to us. You can either email us at ourplan@kilkenny.ie, or you can actually make a submission on Consult. There's an opportunity for you to interact. It's an interactive portal, and all your submission will be registered, and you'll get a receipt for it. Or you can, if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, you can write to us by snail mail, and you can send it to just the council St.Canice's master plan for the planning department, and we will then post it on Consult. So all the submissions that we get will go on Consult, so be aware of that. And eventually then we will do a report to the members of the council, and we will present a draft plan to them. And as Naomi had said, we'll put the plan out back on display. You'll get the opportunity to comment on it again, and it'll go back to the members. So that's in brief I suppose my presentation. Just to remind you that the closing date is the 30th of July. So it's about 2.5 weeks or so left. There's also a proposal for, I suppose, people might go onto the site and have a look around, and we might speak about that later on, if people have the need for that. So, John, I'm going to hand back to you if there's any questions or observations.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Well done in surmounting the technical difficulties at the beginning of that, and thanks to everybody for your patience in relation to that. Now we're going to, this is the part of the meeting where we throw the matters to the floor, I suppose, but it is a virtual floor already, and so just for the duration of this session, people can put in their questions in the chat box at which you will find at the speech bubble at the top of your screen, or if you'd like to make a presentation, or you'd like to verbally outline your issue, you can raise your hand. And I see that Pater McKenzie already has done so, so we'll be coming back to Pater in a minute. But first, I just want to deal with some questions questions that have come in on the chat. Two from Brian Hamilton. One was, is St.Canice in a county council? And I might ask you, Ed Fennell, who's the estates manager for the Southeast for the HSE. Can you shed any light on that, Ed?
Okay, yeah, we did something similar in St.Canice, but it's quite a significantly different site in that the mental health services had moved out of what was a building in very poor repair. And really there was no interest from HSE services to take on that building. Our assessment, because it was a listed building and the cost of upgrading or reusing that building were extremely high. So the decision was made that HSE wanted to move away from the main building and dispose of the main building in St.Canice. We did a master plan for the site to show its proposed use and best use, again, very much hand in hand with the local authority. It wasn't done under the normal planning process in that it was done, I suppose, between plans. But we did identify best use for that. And what has happened is the local authority has bought approximately half of the land, some for amenity along the river, quite a significant section for the development of commercial park, and they've developed a new road through the site, and then the other side of the site has been sold to a commercial developer who bought the old building and is developing hotel/apartments on that building, which is a very good use of what was a fine old building that HSE could not afford. So that's where we are. HSE have owned very little of the old St.Canice site at this stage. We still have a number of houses and a number of day services on the site.
Could I just ask also, the difference, would it be that you have 350 people or so also currently working on the site in Kilkenny and there are no plans to move those people?
Absolutely, that's the case. It's a very different site. It's a very busy site with all of the services that are there. Buildings that we have on St.Canice are in much better condition. They're in, to be fair to the maintenance staff over the years in St.Canice, they have maintained that building in very good condition. So it's a very different site from that perspective. There is no intention to move off site. If anything, we will be developing more services on site in Kilkenny.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Ed. Can I think, Nicholas, this might be for you. It's a point of information. I think it's from Brian Hamilton again. Has an architectural survey been carried out on St.Canice?
No. As I said, we have looked at we still have to look at the attendant grounds of the protected structure. So the St.Canice is a protected structure. The intention of this plan is not to interfere with the fabric of the building, etc. It is to, I suppose, we'll be dealing with the attendant grounds. So the extent to which we, I suppose, can make use of the lands, having regard to that, needs to be clarified. We have our conservation officer on board, and so we are looking at the moment as to what the best options are for dealing with that, and to make sure that we identify all the features of that historic landscape.
Okay, so I know Peter McKenzie had his hand up, but there's a question from Alex Wilston, which I'll put to you. What is the HSE estate's assessment of the long-term, quote, fitness for purpose or function of the main hospital building? Ed, can you address that one?
Okay. The main hospital building would be the St.Canice building. I assume we're talking about. It's obviously not at all fit for purpose for residential mental health services, and they have all ceased. A lot of it has been converted to admin type spaces. So there's a lot of offices, meeting rooms. There's quite a lot of consulting rooms in terms of provision of services. We have our CAMS, child and adolescent mental health services in there. TUSLA have some of their childcare services in there. Those buildings actually work quite well for services that need relatively small rooms. So it's absolutely a good building for what it's being used for by and large at the moment. There's still a few small spaces within the building that are undeveloped areas that were vacated from residential services that still haven't been developed up, but that's a very small proportion of the building at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. I don't know if that answers your question, Alex. If you have any supplementals, feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring you in, or you can put it in the chat box. I'm going to ask Pater McKenzie now, who's raised his hand and asked for
Hello,
opportunity
hello,
to
can you hear me?
put a question up. Pater, would you turn it? Yeah, your camera's on. You have the floor now.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. To be quite honest, my wife told me about this. I live in Altamont Park, which is just across the road from Canice there. There's South Shandon and Lacken up the road. And I would use the park every single day. And I meet a lot of people when I'm over there as well. And for us in our area here, that's a very important green space. And that was highlighted during COVID, when we seen a lot of people going over there just relaxing in that what we'd call green space. So a chill went up my spine when I heard about a development plan coming from the Canice area. Now, if you look at the Kilkenny area, there's a lot of inner green areas that have been developed with housing. And my biggest fear going forward for this country as a whole is that within inner urban areas, green spaces slowly are getting eroded and getting turned into housing. So it was relieving to hear Ed there talking about no way was this site going to be sold for private housing. You know, I really would like to hear Ed reiterating that again, because for me that's a very important point right there.
Okay, well, Ed, did you say that no way was going to be sold for private housing, or can you clarify what you said there? Hello, Ed, yeah?
Okay, I didn't say it was or it wasn't going to be sold for private housing. There is no plan at the moment. I would hate to see it being sold for private housing. And I think part of the development of this master plan and the emphasis that we put on it in terms of the health and well-being benefits of the site is really, I think, for me, get best use of the site. And I would say health and well-being. I think housing in Kilkenny is pretty well catered for on other housing areas. Certainly, it is not our preferred direction to go down the route of selling it off for housing or filling the site with housing. We think there are much better uses for that site.
Yeah, it's
and
as
it
I
is
said,
not our
I
intention.
won't hold the floor for too long. I'll just make one further point in that, in terms of the people living across from there, if needs be, you know, I think I myself will go around and talk to my neighbours about this, because I think that the local people who live close to that, you know, on this side, we're pretty much getting cut off from a ring road. We have a bus service that never came into our estate. So I think consultation with people who live directly across from Canice's there in case of any further development is pretty important. Secondly, with the ecological survey, Nicholas, you said that one had taken place. I would wonder, a further one needs to be done, considering that the former grounds, the Bishop's Palace, now is being developed into housing. And if you're thinking about sites there for nests for birds, they've obviously got to go somewhere. So does a further ecological survey there need to be done? Because I think that's a pretty important ecological site myself.
I don't know if someone from the council would like to answer that, Nicholas, in relation to ecological survey.
I take your point. So I suppose CAS will which is our ecological consultants, they are on standby. So if there are any changes, they've already indicated to us that they will be continuously monitoring and updating as required. So if there are changes, and the survey they did was done in, I suppose, in the spring, and they said that they might have to come back in the autumn as well. Yes, I think it's a work in progress, accounting for the seasons, because there are different uses and different habitats that are active during different seasons. So it is something that we are considering, yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Patter, just in relation to the point that you made about the issues of concern to the residents of Altamount Park and Shandon Park and so on, just to emphasise that I don't work for the Kilkenny County Council or the HSE, but there is a process, and I think they would welcome maximum input from the residents. So I would encourage people who haven't come along this evening to, study the issues paper and make submissions before the end of July, whether together or individually. I think that would be important.
I'll certainly have a conversation with a lot of people then. I've got details taken down from there tonight, so I will certainly pass that on, yeah.
Great, thanks a million. There was just a quick point, Ed, to you from Margaret, who said, similar to Alex Wilson, if the master plan is concentrating on the grounds, does the HSE intend to hold on to ownership of the hospital building? I've heard nothing this evening to lead me to believe that there's any plans to divest of ownership of the hospital building, but would you like to comment on that? Hello, Ed, or is that you, Kieran?
Yeah, well, I can take that one, John.
Yeah.
John,
sorry, this is Kieran, engineer with the HSE.
Kieran, if you can hear that, will you answer, please?
Yes, I can, Ed. Yeah. Well, we have no intention of disposing of the main building in any way. It's, as Ed said, it's almost all in use at the moment. There's a small area still to be developed, which is probably going to be for mental health services. So no, we have no intention of disposing of the main building. Okay. If that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Kieran. That's Kieran, he's senior engineer with HSE Estates, and hopefully, Margaret, that answered your question. Can I ask John May, and apologies, John, you've had your hands raised for quite some time, if you'd like to ask your question or
thanks very much, John.
Statement.
Thank you. I have two questions, if that's okay. The first one is for Nicholas, just in terms of environmental impact and the tree line at the bottom of the estate overlooking the River Nore. Are there environmental issues there that would restrict particular types of development along the tree line there?
Well, I suppose we consider that the tree line probably won't be touched. We've identified some substantial trees within the tree line, whose crown actually extends beyond the tree line, and that may have, I suppose, roots coming out beyond the tree line as well. So those have been identified, and we've asked them to be tagged. So any development will have regard to those, yes.
And in terms of the possibility of the provision of lighting in that area, is the proximity to the Nore an issue in that particular case?
Well, we are cautious about lighting in any areas for ecological reasons. If it's a safety area, for a safety issue for the Lacken walk, that's something that we have to consider on its own merit. And with regards to, I suppose the only thing that we think that might impact on the tree line is maybe an access through there at the moment to access the lands and open up the lands.
Okay.
And what form that might be, that hasn't been decided. As I said, there is an objective in the city plan to maybe link across the river. There might be a bridge there. There might just be a walkway up, or maybe steps up from the Lacken walk up onto the amenity grounds, or whatever might be on the land. So it hasn't been decided, and that's part of what the master plan is supposed to do.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Nicholas. And my second question is for Ed, and possibly Kieran as well, and it might be along the lines of what you've just answered, Kieran. In terms of overall across the site, I mean, there's a number of buildings that are potentially not used at the moment. Is there a possibility for community groups to access and develop those buildings for their community use?
Yeah, I think, it's possible, but remember, this is a pre-draft stage. This is very much the initial stage. So we're trying to do out a roadmap and a framework for what we're going to do with the site. So definitely at this stage, it would be too early to even think of anything like that.
Okay. Thanks very much, Kieran. Thank you, John, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John. Thanks for that input. I'm just going to take a comment from the comment thing. Comes from Donald Deering. He said the Lacken raised walkway is not really suitable as a cycleway. Is there a potential to include this way, which could provide an excellent cycleway from Modlin, then under Rossery Bridge and out to Sion Road? Nicholas, is that one for you or one of your colleagues?
I'll try to address that. The Lacken walk itself is not really a part of this master plan. It is being addressed, I suppose, separately, but we are looking at upgrading the Lacken walk, and if there are opportunities from this that we can exploit to make it more suitable, especially for cycling, and I suppose it's cycling requires maybe a little extra space. And if that's possible, widening the Lacken walk without interfering with the ecological side of it, then it's something that we can look at, yes.
Okay, I hope, Donald, that answered your question. I'm going to remember, if you'd like to raise your hand, you may do so if you wish to ask a question. Next on my list is Seamus Nugent, who I think, Seamus, you've had your hand raised for some time. So if you'd like to ask the question.
Hi, everybody. Seamus Nugent from Kilkenny Recreation and Sports Partnership here. And we welcome the being involved in the steering group and the master plan. And I think it's probably the most significant piece of land in Kilkenny inside the ring road that's left. I don't know whether it's fortunately or unfortunately, I'm speaking for myself, Natalie, all the people in the room here tonight are of a certain age. And I think it's important to do some consultation and engage with young people, similar to what was done in the skate park. They'll be the ones who will inherit it, what we leave them, or what's going to be done with this site. They'll be the ones that will inherit it, and they'll be impacted by the space from, as Joan said, from a health and well-being perspective in the long term. I think it's important that we, after this, we seek and respect their ideas in some way as well.
That's great, Seamus. Thanks very much. I think that's very laudable. I don't know if anyone from either the HSE or the council would like to comment in relation to that. Nicholas?
Yes, that's welcomed, Seamus. We try as much as possible to involve all groups, all age, the whole age profile. So yes, it's something we'll definitely look into, and we might speak to Corlin and Oak to try and get them involved in this.
Okay, thanks, Nicholas, and thanks, Seamus. Councillor John Coonan, you have your hands raised.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, John, and thanks to Ed and Naomi and Nicholas as well. Listen, I'm kind of familiar with the site. I worked at that site for about 40 years, and I welcome the opportunity of maybe participating and giving my views of the development of that master plan for St.Canice site. It's a huge, and I suppose Seamus is right, it's probably the most valuable, it is the most valuable site within the ring road to be developed. But I'm very heartened to the fact that Ed said that there was no intention of letting a major developer in to develop that site. That's something that we don't want. And then I know that he did say at the beginning of his presentation as well that our priority was to promote and protect the health and well-being of society. That's the priority for the health board, and the continuing priority for the development of that site as well. Probably for the development plan, I think, Chairperson, it would be beneficial from the public's point of view, or for people who might have submissions to make as well, to see what plans the HSE have directly for the future use, or what space they would need for the future, in their view, for the future use of that site as well, and what lands would be then surplus to requirement as they see it roughly at the beginning, so that at least you could develop a view of what would be left to develop, as it were. And when we talk about health and well-being as well, my view most certainly is, and I've said this before to Ed and to various other people as well, I think that we should give, apart from the direct health service and well-being as well, that we should give probably priority consideration to allied health services. There are many allied health services there that I suppose would be well cited in unison with the development of a health and wellbeing campus at the site of St.Canice as well. And the other thing, I'm very glad that Ed said at the beginning, we're talking about value for the site as well, that he's not talking about financial value. He's talking about human value and environmental value as well, because originally on that site, and we spoke about the Lacken as well, that Lacken there, I stayed in the Lacken as well, that's the Sullivan's homestead as well, and there was already a connection down to the River Nore from that site, from the front there. There were steps right down and a railing, right down onto the Lacken walk as well. So there are plans to develop the Lacken walk and that boardwalk as well, to widen it and develop it as well. So I see a terrific connection in many ways, not just with the buildings, with the services for health services as well, but allied health services as well, but for environmental and for sports services as well, and for special other services like disability services, elderly services as well, and recovery services. The totality of that site for the health and well-being of the nation should be for recovery services as well. But in the overall, I suggest that maybe because of the importance of this issue and the issue paper, that maybe in the first instance, this should be taken on as a project as well by the local press and the local media yourselves, the radio, at a very early stage, to bring it to the public of all ages, like Seamus has said as well. Everybody should be interested. But there are a lot of people not aware of the size of that site, the scale of the site, and the importance of the site as well. And I think it would be a terrific step as part of this development of the master plan that everyone possible would be made aware of in the first instance. Thanks, Chairperson. Just for the moment, that's it.
Okay, thanks very much, John. I don't know if anyone, Ed or Nicholas, like to comment on that. Could I just, there's one or two more people that wish to address the meeting, but just Fiona O'Neill from the PPN made a comment there, which was supported by Councillor Maria Dollard. It was in relation to the inclusion in the plans of a changing places toilet facility on the grounds. And Fiona said it's an absolute must and should be taken as a given as part of the plan. I don't know, Fiona, if you'd like to say anything else in relation to that. No, Fiona, no. Can't hear you, Fiona. Okay. Well, look, we'll take that if you want to add in text. I don't know what nature of a technical glitch that was, but I'm going to ask Mary T. Brennan to give us her comment now, please. Mary? Hello?
Yes, I would suggest along the lines of well-being that there be a lovely sensory garden, particularly for people who need healing and for older people. Not playgrounds for children now. This would be a sensory garden for people who need relaxation. Lots of beautifully scented plants, and I think it would fit in with the general wellness theme going through.
Okay. If anyone would like to comment on that, I think that was just a suggestion. Excuse me, I have a barking dog in the background here. Apologies if that's interfering with your audio. We have had some comments that the signal has gone very low for some people, and certainly there has been some audio issues over the last couple of minutes. There was a question, I thought we had dealt with it, but Margaret asked, I did ask earlier, but if Ed could clarify the needs of the HSE for the site, what are they? So Ed, I don't know if you'd come back on that, just maybe to address again what you outlined about the needs of the HSE for the site.
Absolutely.
Hello, Ed. Katrina, is Ed on the call, do you know, still?
Hello.
Hello, Ed. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, John.
Yeah. Hello, Ed. No. Maybe we'll come back to that one. If Ed, Kieran, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'd say what Ed is going to say is that
I think I got the question there. It's about the needs, the HSE needs on the site.
Yeah. It's Margaret asked, and I thought I had put it to you, but she's asking for clarity about the needs of the HSE for the site. What are the needs of the HSE for the site?
John, Ed seems to be coming and going there.
Ed,
So I'll just step in, and if Ed comes back in,
Ron, if you want to take it,
he can take over. But we're carrying out a similar process ourselves to work out what our needs are. So we want to do our own master plan as part of this. So that's what started us originally trying to do a development control plan. So we're trying to identify what all our needs are from the various services within the HSE. So that and then we came on board with the local authority. So that's a process that we're at the moment. So it's going to tie in with this overall master plan.
Would it be fair to say that that is for the development of services and maybe the inclusion of new services on the site rather than the downgrading or the moving of existing services?
Oh, I would say it would be for an increase in the services. Maybe I'm not picking you up right there, John, but we would identify there's certain buildings that we will need over the next 20 years, right? So it would be a case of identifying blocks on the site that we would say that area is to be reserved for future expansion for the HSE. So it would be one element of the overall master plan. So we're still trying to work that out ourselves.
Okay, so you're in the middle of it, but plans like those 350 jobs that are there at the moment, there's no plans to move those.
Correct.
Okay. Brian Hamilton has a question in. Who does the HSE or Kilkenny County Council see providing the funds for the development of the site?
I'll try and address this.
You'd like to, yeah.
John, I'll try and address that. I suppose the funding is a parallel process. Firstly, we see that in many funding applications that the council make at the moment to national departments for funding streams to come online, is that you have to have a plan in place first. Otherwise, you cannot really apply for funding. So this is the first step: get the plan in place, and then when there are funding streams available from national, in terms of the national development plan, etc., then you can apply for it and say, and activate certain elements of the development on the site. It may be in a phased way. There's no money available at the moment, I suppose, but without a plan, you're at nothing. So that's the first step.
Okay. There is a supplemental question from Margaret, and perhaps Kieran and Nicholas, you could address this. But Margaret asks, in the light of Kieran's statement that the HSE is in parallel working on a plan, is this process premature then if the HSE hasn't established their exact needs for the site into the future? Kieran?
I don't think it's premature. As Nicholas said there, it's very important that you identify approximately what you'll need. It's very hard to predict what we need in 20 years' time, but we feel that a number of it will probably involve a number of buildings. So it's relatively easy to in a development control plan to identify certain areas on the site that you are going to ring fence, and that would be future developments of services for the HSE. You can do that. I mean, that doesn't cost anything.
Okay. Thanks, Kieran.
Okay,
a quick one for you,
there, John.
Okay, Ed.
Ed here.
This is Ed.
Yeah, I just add like this.
Final.
Yeah, this master plan is the local authority developing their view of this site. So it and that really gives us the context then when that plan is developed in terms of what the HSE, what is suitable in terms of the planning authority's view of the site. So it is as much, or it is more a local authority statutory planning process than a HSE doing a development plan for what we want to build.
Okay. sorry, now I'm just there's a number of questions coming in. There are a number of people wish to join. Councillor Fitzpatrick, if you can give your hand up.
Thank you, John, and thanks to Ed, and thanks to Kieran and everyone for joining. Certainly, this is a magnificent site. It's an absolute magnificent site. I took time there just over Christmas to walk the site, to look at it, because I had forgotten some of it, because I spent a bit of time along that site, as both my parents worked on that site. My father as a labourer on the actual farmlands, and it was nice to go down into the old farmyard and look at all that. I think certainly what Kieran has said, I think really the HSE should evaluate their requirements for the next 20, 30 years and make sure they have enough land left to do whatever, to expand the services or do what they can to develop the services. Also then I would certainly also be looking at just the Lacken walk and the steps and the access to the river. That needs improvement. I know it's tying into the site, but there's also an opportunity, and a lot of people I talk to, my mother was in her 80s, and they're the other day just chatting about the site, and she was saying, God, she remembers this fabulous view of Kilkenny City as you came in along the old Dublin Road down from, people would remember Mealy's shop, and as you came down along, and you could see from Lacken House, and you could see the whole city in the river, the castle and all that. And I think we need to be having a look at something like that. But also to remember the pitch and putt is there. Again, a lot of history regarding the pitch and putt. We haven't mentioned the tennis court. That could be all developed. And also there has been, to us as public representative, has been a lot of representation over the years, and we've never been able to deliver on it really on a sports facility like a running, cross-country running, or the outer scale of that whole area, that might fit into something like that. Again, I think what Seamus Nugent has said regarding young people and Corlin and Oak, I think is ideal to get involved in that. But again, I suppose we need to hear what exactly the HSE have for their 20-30 year plan, to couple together with Kilkenny County Council, again, what's coming. And the other thing is, I was wondering, was there any chance as you head in down to you know, and the gentleman from Shandon Park mentioned about going down and down, could we develop even a crossing to the Castle Park from down at the bottom? And I would try to maintain as many of them beautiful trees. I actually just studied them as I was down there just around Christmas time. So I think there's a lot of an exciting project that we could develop for the whole city, which amenities and protecting our city and developing amenities like what you'd see in other towns in France and different places, where you'd see amenities developed inside a town and inside a ring road. And so I think there's a real opportunity, and I'd hope there'll be a lot of engagement on this. Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks very much, Pat. Nicholas, I don't know if you want to address any of that. Say the scope
John,
for developing.
John, there was one little final point I forgot to say. There was another site developed many a while ago there, which was the Dundrum Central, and I think people should look up Dundrum Central.ie and have a look, as it was a HSE complex as well, and it's actually interesting to see that is being developed and how the process is going. So again, that might be just worth having a look at. Sorry about that.
No, you're all right. Dundrumcentral.ie. Sorry, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Just about the views there.
No, sorry, John. No, I have no problem with the views expressed there. I think they're all very valid, and so yes, in terms of Lacken Walk, I think that's definitely a focus of this plan. The interface with Lacken Walk, and then also to look across, tying the site into the Castle Park. That's a great opportunity, and as I said earlier, we have an objective in the city plan to look at a pedestrian crossing there. So that's something we'll definitely consider.
Thanks, Nicholas. There's a question in from Anne Barrett, or an opinion or a comment stating there is an acute need for suitable housing among those with disabilities, including people with mental health disabilities. Should some section of the campus be earmarked for housing, I would propose that those with disabilities be allocated at least 25% of any housing that is developed. So I don't know the state, like we're at the pre-draft stage of any master plan. I don't know, Nicholas, would you like to?
Yes, well, if there is an element of housing, obviously we will, the council's housing policy will come into play. If there are people on the housing list, people with disabilities, definitely if those houses, if that need is identified, it should be provided for, I believe.
Okay, so I have a few quick questions. Is this comes from Padder McKenzie, who we heard from earlier. Is this process essentially about selling the agricultural land by the ring road? I would imagine the answer to that we will receive is no. Kieran and Nicholas, would you like to comment on that, or Ed?
Yeah, if you can hear me on that one,
yeah.
The answer is absolutely not.
Okay.
It's a very clear, that is not what it's about at all. In fact, it's what we don't want to do. If there's any sale of land, I would hope it would be between ourselves and the local authority in terms of development of local services.
Okay, thank you very much. Pretty categorical answer. Margaret asks, will the master plan have statutory basis? Nicholas, perhaps if you took that one.
A master plan in itself is not a statutory plan, but it will have a statutory, I suppose, significance in terms of the fact that it is supported by the city and county development plan as an objective. So once this plan is adopted, we will go back to the city plan, and if required, then we will amend that plan to have to make this, to put this on a statutory footing by virtue of its inclusion in the city plan, the development plan.
Okay, another question for you, Nicholas, comes from Paddy O'Kellig, and he says, I noted reference to an ecological audit / report, but no environmental audit. Can you indicate whether the County Council intends to do a full environmental audit?
Well, there will be I suppose as part of this process, there will be a strategic environmental assessment done, an appropriate assessment. Now that'll deal, that's kind of a statutory requirement in terms of the Habitats Directive anyway. But we have the environmental report is quite comprehensive, as I said, the Habitats report. And I just need to get the name right now. I think it is a habitats assessment we did. It looks at various aspects of the environment. Now, it doesn't consider the human environment and the built environment, etc. So I'm not sure if that's the environments that's being referred to, a full environmental audit, but we will definitely.
There is a supplementary comment in from Paddy O'Kellig, which I will put to. He asks we put it to Kieran and Ed. And the question is, the context of my above question relates to the earlier concerns of residents. And I think by that, Paddy, by earlier, you mean not at earlier this meeting, but at an earlier stage in time. Concerns of residents of Dukes Meadows about spoil from the River Nore drainage scheme in the early 2000s been dumped at 3 locations, Bishop's Meadows, Dukes Meadows and Ossory Meadows area. Can Mr. Owan or Mr. Fennell confirm whether these lands had spoil from that drainage scheme dumped there in the early 2000s? My suspicion is that may be outside the ambit of this meeting this afternoon or this evening. I don't know about that thing, but as the question has been asked, I'll put it to you, Ed, Fennell or Kieran, if you want to comment on that.
Okay, yeah, I hear the question. I have no information on what's been asked. So look, I think that's one we'd have to take away and maybe pick up separately.
Yeah, Ed, I might answer that one.
On that.
Yeah, when that was about 2004 or so, when as part of the flood relief scheme in Kilkenny, there was some of the land which was at the edge of our site was removed and put in top of just inside the boardwalk between. So it's on part of that amenity. On part of that amenity area, there is a kind of plateau there of that came from the site. I'm not sure what the major concerns are about that. That was part of the flood relief, and we had no objection to that.
Okay, I hope, Paddy, that shed some light on your question. Sorry, there's another one. I might add, the EPA ordered Diageo to undertake tests in relation to this. I don't know, Paddy.
Yeah, but John, I think we're going into the PCBs, into that controversy, and I don't think we'd get into that tonight.
Okay. This is about the master plan, so I'm going to take that. But I think if you want to follow up, Paddy, with the HSE, you may wish to do so. Paddy asks, I think, why not? Well, I think from my understanding of your question, Paddy, is that it relates to events around 2004 to do with the flood relief scheme. This meeting is specifically to deal with the development of a master plan for the area of land around St.Canice's Hospital, Maudlin's land, and the other area, whose name I can't, Lacken and Maudlin's land. And so I'm kind of deeming that as fallen slightly outside the purview of what we're addressing tonight. And as most people have joined the meeting to discuss that issue, I'm going to move on from that, if that's okay with you. And I hope you understand where I'm coming from. There was a question from Brian Hamilton as to who deals with the, or who, sorry now, well, I just tried to, who maintains the pitch and putt course on the site? Kieran, I think that might be for you, is it? Is that? Yeah. Sorry, Kieran, you're muted.
Sorry, excuse me. Yeah,
No
the pitch and putt is operated and looked after through the pitch and putt club. So they're operating under license. They have a license with ourselves, which is going back a long time. I don't know about the finer details about who maintains it.
Okay. I don't know if that answers the question, but we can get more information on that. Now, we're coming up to 8:30. We had hoped to draw the meeting to a close around then. We still have a number of people who want to get in, and we will get to all the comments. But if people have any more questions that they want to add to the chat box, if they would do so. But I'm going to call on Maria Dollard, Councillor Maria Dollard, who's had her hand up for quite some time. And thanks for your patience. After that, we'll be coming to Paul Cummins and Councillor Eugene McGuinness.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm quite taken with Ed's vision for St.Canice's and the whole notion of, I suppose, the way healthcare and health and well-being has changed over the years, and it's very clear that it has. And I suppose to juxtaposition that beside the history of the, I suppose, psychiatric institutions in Ireland, and as a person who's involved in mental health and disability, and with the services and the people that use those services, I've had some very strong views expressed to me about St.Canice's, quite negative views. And I think it's a huge opportunity to create a project or projects that are healing in nature. And I'm thinking specifically of, people who have struggled with their mental health, or people, as I would know, lots of people on the autism spectrum who fall outside, I suppose, current services, but who benefit from, I suppose, supported living environments. And I think that we have a lot of people here on this meeting, and there's a lot of, I suppose, what I would call the mainstream ideas that are coming up, the ones you would expect to come up. But I think we may have to think about how we engage with those marginalised groups of people who still have needs, and this may be an opportunity to, I suppose, give something positive back to groups of people who have been not served well by the state in previous times, and who, would benefit from the development of maybe sheltered or supported accommodation. And in the context of what Ed has said, about the creation of healing environment and health and well-being, and it would fit in with all of the other things that people have spoken about. So I would love to see some consideration given to how we engage those groups and those allies and representatives and the people themselves to hear their thoughts and voices in the development of the plan, because they may need something different from this process. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dollard. Yeah, that's great. Points well made. I don't know if anybody would wish to comment any further, but a very clear preference expressed there by you for the inclusion of those types of projects, which I personally think sounds very positive. Nicholas or anybody from HSE like to comment? No, I don't think. Maria, you're not looking for a particular answer to that.
Sorry, no, not a particular answer, but just to take on board, I suppose, as we go forward, that we make special efforts to include people who may not be here tonight.
Okay. Well, I think it's an opportune time to say that that all of the contributions made this evening are considered as part of contributing to the consultation process in the same way as a written submission made to the process as well are. So just on the same ilk, there are more suggestions to be taken in. They're not exactly questions, but a post from Jerry McGovern, who says one other potential use for part of the site would be to have a retirement village on the site. So I think that's a point well made, given the earlier from Mary Murphy, I think it was, about the whole life stages of people, and that the site should try and cater for a range of age groups, and equally the point well made earlier that young people should have an opportunity to input into it. Margaret says, can we put an ASD preschool and support services on the site? So I think that's another point of view that can be reflected in the submission. So Nicholas, if you'd like to comment on how that suggestion would be incorporated or considered.
Well, we have no plan at the moment, so any suggestions can be taken on board and will be taken on board. Obviously, if there are lands to be allocated for any particular needs, preschools, retirement villages, etc., that's all in the pot. It's all in the mix. So let's have a look at that and consider it. Okay, that's very positive. Thank you very much. Can I ask Paul Cummins, who's had his hand up for quite a while, and thank you for your patience. Paul, the floor is yours. Virtually.
Thanks very much.
If you'd like to ask your question, just unmute yourself.
Sure. At a recent city development plan, it was pointed out that there was a need for sports facilities, indoor sports facilities. With the expansion of the population in the town, there was no sports facilities in the plan at all. That this site is a big opportunity for a proper multi-purpose sports facility that doesn't exist. The watershed was promised to be, but it doesn't allow minority sports, which are considered minority sports in this country, allowed in. With our multicultural community now, there's a lot of sports, and a lot of people are left aside or left to travel. We'd have to travel to Belfast and Longford to play. And it was also adopted into council policy recently that they would help with the process of facilitating some kind of a multi-purpose sports facility, and a site like this would be ideal and fitting, as in the health and well-being for all communities, all inclusive, not just the mainstream sports.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much for that. And if I understand the process correctly, and the purpose of this meeting, that will be heard as a suggestion and considered. Nicholas, yeah, am I correct in that?
Yes, we invite everybody to make a submission, and we are aware of that. Sid, there were various submissions to the City and County Development Plan on that particular issue. Now, there are many lands zoned appropriately throughout the city that can be used, but it might be an issue of space, sufficient space, etc. But as I said earlier on, it's very important to identify a funding stream as well. So, but if we identify a location for something like that, then at least when you apply for your funding, you can say, well, we have a suitable site. So yes, make your submission and we'll have a look at that. Okay.
I just have one more person with their hand up, but I just will bring a comment which has been submitted by Paddy O'Callig, who we heard from earlier. He said he wishes to also submit the talk of development on relevant lands is premature until such time as a comprehensive environmental assessment of those lands which were used for the dumping of riverbed material in the early 2000s is undertaken. I presume, I'm not too sure whether does that fall within the ambit of this plan, Nicholas, as it would seem to be outside the immediate area of the St.Canice's lands that we're talking about.
I am not familiar with the particular lands that the deposits were made on. It is probably, if it's adjacent to the river, it most likely will be avoided. We won't be developing it in this plan. There's a fair area close to the river that I can say that because of the gradient, etc., it mightn't be developable at all. So it might be that this land falls within that particular area. But I can't say for sure, and I'll discuss with Kieran if he has more information, and I'll also speak to the city engineer to try and identify exactly where those lands are.
Okay, thank you very much, and hopefully Paddy that clarifies matters for you. Can I call on Councillor Eugene McGuinness, who's had his hands up for considerable time? Eugene, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for all involved here. I'm very familiar with the site, obviously. I played pitch and putt on that site when I was a young chap and fished down the river, down the Lacken, so I'm very familiar with it. I think that the guiding force here has to be health and well-being on that site. It's a huge site and it should be developed properly, and I welcome all the suggestions. I was interested when Ed was asked there earlier on about the possible development or private development. And I think, Ed, you said that you would not like to see it going down that road. I'm interested to know, what do you think would make it go down that road, or encourage it down that road? Because I certainly wouldn't like to see a big housing development up there. And I know that the people in Shandon Park and Altymount are directly affected. And I think they should be brought on board, certainly. But I'm interested to know, what do you think would direct it down that road? That's the first question. The second one is the HSE and how much land that they require. I think that's been asked by Councillor John Coonan there and a few more people. And I think that's very important, because we need to know what land we're going to be developing. And as such, it's open for development. And as such, I think it's really important that we know the future plans, HSE, what buildings they would require and what lands they would require. I'd also like to know, with regard to the pitch and putt, this has come up on quite a few occasions. I know there's a group up there that have the pitch and putt, and they run the pitch and putt, and have done so since I was playing pitch and putt, which wasn't today or yesterday. But I thought is that particular land, are you suggesting that that's going to be developed as well? Or is the pitch and putt going to be retained? Because I thought there was a legal contract in place there, but maybe that's going down a different road. But I'd like to know your opinions on that. But I think, as I said, it has to be health and well-being. This lands, that has to be the emphasis. And I'm really interested in the debate. I know it's in its infancy here, but I'm really interested in the debate as it goes forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor McGuinness. I suppose there's three questions there. Ed, a direct question put to you, I suppose, for clarification around when you said about development for housing or whatever. Councillor McGuinness asking what would direct down that road, i.e. sale to a developer or something. I don't know if you can answer that.
Okay, I suppose look at very briefly in the overall context, as I mentioned early on, there is a certain pressure in terms of disposal of surplus lands and reinvesting that in capital. When I look at where we've done that previously, and I suppose the best example is in St.Canice and Enniscorthy, you know, we did sell the land and reinvested it, but actually what we get in terms of the capital funding and what that funding develops for us is very small. When I compare that to what I think we can achieve by making really good use of the lands available for health and well-being and developing the kind of health promotion and health and well-being facilities, you know, the lands in St.Canice, what was sold to the private developer, because we had a very dilapidated building, but there was 40 acres, it made something like 800,000 on the open market. That bought us one disabled house. To my mind, that's very small in comparison to what we can achieve by actually using the land in a health and well-being way.
So it's a kind of cost-benefit analysis in relation to health and well-being versus cold hard cash, I suppose.
Yeah, the cold hard cash, I think, is relatively very small and disappears very quickly. I think having a campus for the next 50 or 100 years that people can use and use well, I think the benefits are way, my view, the benefits are way ahead of just selling it off. And once we sell it off, we have no control of what that use will be.
Okay, can I ask you also, Ed, following up on Councillor McGuinness's second element of his plan, can you give some idea, and I know you're talking about doing a parallel master plan, but what land does the HSE require or is likely to require? Talk to us a bit about the process. You know, for example, it would seem that the St. Luke's Hospital site is quite tight. Ultimately, you know, is it likely? I know you can't comment specifically, but like, how do you decide what land you're going to require there in the coming years, 20, 30 years?
Okay, we have put a call out through our service side in terms of asking that question in terms of what's on their development plans in terms of service development and the facilities associated with that. Now, that it's over 12 months ago since we actually did put something out to all of the heads of services, and for the last 12 months or more, people have been absolutely up to their eyes dealing with COVID and all of the issues around that. So really, that whole process has stalled within the HSE for over a year or heading on a year and a half at this stage. It actually now starting to arise because people are starting to come to us now with their hand up saying we will need space. Some of the kind of things that are coming at us in terms of requiring space. For example, I mentioned the corporate finance department within St.Canice. They're providing a lot of national services out of Kilkenny. And they are working on a plan for a significant expansion of that centralised finances services. And if that's happening, they will need significantly more space. We have TUSLA, Child and Family Agency, which are a separate agency, but working very much hand in hand with HSE. They are looking to develop a single central centre for Kilkenny, where they would, because they have people scattered here, there and yon in small offices, and again, so they're looking for space. So those requests are coming to us now. So we are gathering that information. We certainly, the ones we know of, we will be making definite provision as far as can in terms of allocating notional space, but we will also be identifying some strategic development expansion space as well that gives us reasonable flexibility.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Councillor McGuinness. Just the final leg of the question was in relation to pitch and putt, and I think, Kieran, maybe that's for you, or maybe it's for Ed, I'm not too sure, but is that land going to be developed as well, or can you give some clarity in relation to that? Kieran, Ed? Kieran, you're on mute.
Yeah. Do you want to take that one, or will I?
Is Ed on?
Kieran, if you could take that. Signal is terrible bad here at the moment.
Okay. Well, we have spoken to the pitch and putt, and we have told them that we are doing this master plan. So there has been no, we haven't gone any further. As I said at the start, we're at pre-draft stage. This is very much initial discussions. So there has been nothing further done with the what we'll be doing with the pitch and putt area.
Okay, Councillor McGuinness, So did we cover your three elements, your main elements of your
No,
question?
thank you, Chair. I'm just asking about the pitch and putt. It seems to be just somewhat vague. That's all. I just thought that it was fairly reasonably straightforward. That I thought that there was a legal agreement in place with the pitch and putt, and I was wondering whether they were going to be facilitated within this plan, or this piece of land, which is quite substantial in the overall context of this piece or of the entire property. Are they staying there? Are they moving? Is there are we to consider this piece of property or not? That's really what I want to know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so are we to consider this piece of property?
Yes, yeah. There's nothing decided on this. So there has been no decision made. Ed, do you want to take anything on that?
Okay, I suppose just looking at the overall site, to me, it is one of the key developable areas of the site. A pitch and putt course could be anywhere on the site. We have met with the chairman of the pitch and putt club and told him that this whole process was kicking off and was happening. If there are any changes, they will be with discussion and agreement with the pitch and putt club. But at the same time, you know, that doesn't rule out that there won't be changes.
Okay, is that a clear enough answer for you, Councillor McGuinness? Yeah. Okay. Councillor John Coonan has a hand up, but before that, Margaret is on with a further question, and perhaps this cuts to the core of why we're having a consultation meeting again. But Margaret asks to be involving itself, for the HSE to be involving itself in a statutory council master plan when the HSE doesn't seem to know what its needs are. Parsing what I've heard so far, I've understand that this is part of a process to try and find out what the public and stakeholders would like to see for as uses for the site prior to the HSE finalising their plans and prior to the county council finalising its plans. But I don't know if that's a misconstruing of the situation. But Nicholas, would you like to put me right on that if I'm wrong? Sorry, Nicholas, you're on mute.
Like with any development plan, the uses are indicative. So and we can't plan down to the millimeter. So if the HSE gives us an indication of an area of land that they might require for a particular use, we'll have to include a generous allowance for that, and that will probably allow for future expansion of unplanned, or unforeseen developments at this stage. We have to be mindful of the fact that the HSE, that is their land. The primary objective is to facilitate them on this land. So I would say in our master plan, we'd be very generous in allowing for the HSE's needs, and I think that should nearly address many of the concerns that I hear here tonight about people saying that health and well-being should be the focus of this site. Yes, and as Kieran has said as well, we have no plan at this stage, so we have to try and fit in everything that comes at us in some way or manner, but we have to keep the big picture in mind as well as to where we're heading with these lands.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicholas, for that. Councillor John Coonan, you've had your hand up again, so if you'd like to.
Sorry, Chairperson. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm delighted. Look, we did touch with the probable future uses for the site for the HSE and their future needs. I think that was very important. That was the point I was making. I think it is in the overall sense. But the other point that was made, somebody mentioned earlier on in the presentation as well, there was only one entrance to the site, effectively. I think there are two, and the two still exist. There's an entrance to the Sign Road, cul-de-sac. It used to be formerly the Sign Road, but there still is an entrance there, the Gate Lodge. There's an entrance on that side to the site, that massive site there as well. And that brings you down to the former part of the farmyard, just the pig green down there, onto the river, and the slope down onto the expansive river area of land, down by the ring road, the Kilkenny ring road as well. So they're effectively, I don't know with that, I hope that, and I'm sure it will be part of the plan as well, for access to the site, because access is very important, as well as linkage with the city, access to the site. So there are two entrances there. I think that should
Okay, so I suppose
there for consideration.
Sorry,
that very neatly
John,
kind of
just,
highlights.
can I
sorry,
just comment
Nicholas,
on
yeah.
that? The second entrance, yes, that's correct. There is a second entrance. There is, however, a bit of a, I suppose, a pinch point there with this, where the Sion Road meets the Dublin Road. That's a very bad intersection. So that'll have to be addressed as part of any plan if that is to be allowed as a second entrance to the site. The alternative is that we look at maybe a left in and a left out from the ring road. But that's something that we'll have to discuss with TII, the Transport Infrastructure Ireland, because it is a road that's under their control and they're very hesitant to give access. I think that'll be the first prize if we can get an access off the ring road, and it will only be left in, left out, if at all. Alternatively, we might look at an upgrade of that junction of the old Sion Road, but that'll put a lot of additional traffic down the old Sion Road, and we'll have to do an assessment to see if it's actually suitable for that. I think there was a submission came in earlier that addressed
from Valerie.
Just that point from Valerie about local residents, whether we want to send a lot of big traffic, construction traffic, etc. I don't foresee there'll be huge construction traffic on this site, but it's just the day-to-day use of the site. It might attract a lot of people, using the site for whatever reason. What we might necessarily want to send them down that road.
Okay, thank you very much, and I think that hopefully addresses your question, which I was about to raise about allaying fears of local residents that future drive more traffic. So from what I hear, Nicholas and so on are keeping that very much to the fore. Final comment in, and we're going to draw it to a close now, is from Seamus Nugent, who said it would be nice to know a ballpark figure. Will the HSE need 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres? It'd be hard to develop a plan not knowing how much land is available. I think we've addressed those points. I don't think we'll get an answer tonight, unless, Kieran, you want to just sign off with the figure,
with the prediction,
or Ed. Very large area of ground. We're talking about 60 acres. Kieran?
No, it would be very difficult to predict what exactly we need. There's a central area around that building. We would picture that we would develop around that area, but it's very difficult to put acreage on it at this stage.
Okay, folks, I'm going to draw that to a close now. We've had very healthy interaction, and we've had over 40 or almost 50 people at some stage on such a lovely evening. That's a very creditable attendance. Thank you all for your participation, for your questions, and for the civilized way in which the meeting was conducted. Remember, you can get documents and more information on the process and on the plan and the issues document. Just go to consult.kilkenny.ie. That's consult.kilkenny.ie. And if you'd like to make a submission, you can send it to ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie. That's ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie, or you can send by letter to the planning section, market pre-draft St.Canice's plan to Kilkenny County Council, John Street, Kilkenny. So just thank all our contributors this evening. Thank you for questions, comments, and for taking part. Thanks to the people who made presentations and who took questions. Not an easy thing to do. Nicholas Lowe, Naomi Scully, Katrina O'Sullivan from Kilkenny County Council, and Kieran Ruan and Ed Fennell from the HSE. Thank you very much, folks. Do encourage people that you know, be they interested in the whole health and well-being area, be they local residents or whoever, do encourage them to make submissions. They have a number of weeks at this stage. But just on my own behalf, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here this evening, and good night, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.